Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and it's time to look ahead to the waiver wire short form style with my good friend Jake Ciely from The Athletic. And of course, it was a wild week for injury news that we're just coming off of for all the running backs. So many running backs already picked up off the waiver wire. But if you're looking in some leagues, this guy still might be out there. It's Michael Carter. He is 39% rostered in Yahoo. He is over 50% rostered already on Sleeper because they have a little bit more activity in those leagues, a little bit deeper leagues. So again, we understand Michael Carter is a guy that, might not be available in your league, but I think we got to talk about him as the number one guy coming off this week here. 18 carries, 51 yards, 1 touchdown. He also had 5 targets, caught all 5 for 22. So obviously no Benson, no Connor, DeMarcado, doesn't quite recognize where the goal line is, but Michael Carter does. And let's talk about him to start the show today, Jake.
Yeah, so I think that's the important part is it's not just the waivers because it's most leagues in Sleeper, as you said, probably already have him rostered, but in 10-team leagues but the bigger question also being like, what are we looking at going forward here? And the one thing that the Cardinals told us clearly was, hey, yeah, the guy off the practice squad is taking the lead job. Like we heard all week, it might be a 1-2 punch. It might be 50-50 with DeMarcado on the passing downs. DeMarcado not only kept his role, it was that minimized role. It was occasional third downs. It was some 2-minute drills. And then, of course, as you mentioned, he just made the problem even worse in the fact of throwing the ball down at the goal line, which we're still doing every single year for the entire history of the NFL, and these still idiots keep doing it. It's not even a celebration. It's not even, I don't get it. But anyway, they brought in Bam Knight before they brought in DeMarcado, which tells you all you need to know. And that's why we're talking about Michael Carter, because looking at Michael Carter, yeah, we could see DeMarcado go the other way. They do face Green Bay in 2 weeks, and maybe that's a game where you do see more of DeMarcado in the mix if he hasn't been benched because of that stupid, idiotic fumble. But at the same time, even that case, 60-40 still to Michael Carter, and that's the point here. If you didn't get him, or if you did get him, like sell high, you're probably looking at, you would have to think top 20 because he's clearly the lead. It's still going to be Michael Carter. It's still not going to be amazing production every single week. But as an RB2 against the Colts this week, yeah, he's going to be in play. Against Green Bay, it might be a little bit more dicey, but we're still talking about buys. And then you get the Cowboys coming out of their bye. So that's why we're talking Michael Carter.
All right, last week we talked a little bit about Isaiah Bond, too, of the Cleveland Browns, who has a lot of talent, a lot of speed, and now a new quarterback with Dillon Gabriel. So Gabriel made his first start yesterday. There were some good and some bad in it. Obviously, some issues there. But this does seem to be a player still that I think we're looking at and saying projectability long-term. You see Judkins, you see Isaiah Bond, you see this team getting a little bit more explosive. And to a certain degree, too, you have Dillon Gabriel who can move around the pocket, get loose, make things happen, extend plays a little bit. So all of that, I think, helps the Isaiah Bond argument a little bit as you're looking forward. And I agree. Look, as somebody I picked up in all my leagues last week because of what I saw, Cedric Tillman's going to be on the shelf for a little bit still. But even when Tillman comes back, I mean, you could see a Jerry Jeudy moved, at a trade deadline. I could see that happening. But what are your thoughts here on Isaiah Bond going forward of the Cleveland Browns?
So not only was he out there a ton, he was out there only behind Isaiah Bond and David Njoku in routes, but he only had the second most. I said only David Njoku had more targets than him. Of course, we would love to see those targets.
Jerry Jeudy, just for clarity, right? Because you had said he's behind Isaiah Bond.
No.
Isaiah Bond can't be behind Isaiah Bond. I mean, he can.
Isaiah Bond was behind. I said, yeah, it is very zen. Yeah. I mean, he might have been. If he was behind himself, some of those targets might have been catchable. So it would have been nice.
It would have been nice. So a little bit more catchable targets would be nice.
Routes were Jeudy and Njoku ahead of Bond, and then only Njoku was ahead of Bond in targets. There you go. Like I might have tripped up over there. So somehow we've clarified.
Before the YouTube comments come for you, I'm going to come for you.
Don't they all the time anyway? So I would have loved to see. I even tweeted it live in the game as Isaiah Bond talent fan. I said I would love to see some of these targets actually turn into receptions. And there's something there. Gabriel is looking for him. Gabriel just wasn't. The timing wasn't there. He was kind of looking at him. When we talk about the NFL window, that once you recognize the NFL window as a quarterback, it's already closing and it's too late. Mm-hmm. And that's what we saw somewhat with Gabriel yesterday. He was connecting a ton with Njoku. Obviously, people want to get back on the Njoku train. By the way, I'm one of the people that dropped Njoku for Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor had a fine day, but it wasn't Njoku. But anyway, point being, I think there's going to be opportunities for Bond going forward. And you mentioned it, that if Tillman comes back, maybe he's not even the 2 when he is back, and maybe because of that spawned, or as you said, Jerry Jeudy's not even on this team anymore. Maybe Njoku's not on this team anymore as Cleveland looks going forward. But either way, you have to like the 7 targets. You have to like the fact that Gabriel looked for him early and often and throughout the game, and it didn't stop even though the connections weren't there. And that's why I like Isaiah Bond for the appeal. He's not going to be more than a wide receiver 4, but we are talking now. We immediately go from everybody has him probably in the league listening, Michael Carter, and now we have 4 guys that are like probably available in most of your leagues.
Yeah. And I would say also with Bond too, you have Fannin, you have Judkins. Going back to that, it feels like the Browns are kind of slowly remaking themselves quietly. And I'm kind of curious about it. Dillon Gabriel's
and that was the interesting thing.
Good football, but we'll see how that goes.
They dropped Fannin to about 50% of the routes yesterday, which was really interesting.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on it. We'll definitely keep an eye on those things. But Bond is a guy, especially with the bye weeks coming too. You could spot start him in that flex spot potentially. All right, let's talk about some of those tight ends, right? Theo Johnson had 2 scores from Jaxson Dart. Mason Taylor was a guy that I know Debro was talking about last week here on some programs. Taylor yesterday, 67 yards on 9 receptions. So he's getting a ton of work. So he's starting to emerge. It's weird to say this, but it was a really good week for free agent tight ends. The question is now, how do you spend on them, right? Are we chasing these touchdowns with Theo Johnson, or is Mason Taylor more of the priority for you?
I think you could argue either way. So the interesting one for Theo Johnson is going to be if Darius Slayton's hurt. So because he got hurt late in that game, and if he's missing time, now they're down another person, and now you're looking at Jalen Highland has to step up. Well, what we saw kind of in that game, it wasn't just Theo Johnson, as a lot of people got frustrated early, and understandably so, as Daniel Bellinger was back in the mix. But similar to the Browns and some of these other teams, it was a lot more 2 tight ends than the Giants have really ever run. And I think that could be something going forward, which I'm not overly concerned about Daniel Bellinger because I pulled it up right before we did this. 31% of the routes. Like, he just happened to get those early targets, and that was frustrating people. I think both are in play. I will take Theo Johnson slightly in front of Mason Taylor, despite the fact I think Mason Taylor's role as the number 2 for the Jets is much more clear and much more secure. This is somebody you and I and a couple other people on this network were talking about in the preseason is like, watch for Taylor, because look at that receiving room. He's going to be the number 2 in some time. Theo Johnson, because of injuries, is potentially walking into the number 2 role where it can be Wan'Dale Robinson and him. If Slayton's injury is not that bad, I think you could argue for Taylor over. It's just you're going to get the inconsistency of Justin Fields. If that game ended 90% of the way through that game, Mason Taylor and the whole rest of the Jets would have had a miserable day. Garrett Wilson would not have had a touchdown. Justin Fields would be the 27th quarterback out of 28 this week. Like, just that last 10% of the game saved everything. So if you're looking for tight ends, which, by the way, Joe, we're on a record pace, potentially, depending on what happens tonight. You remember when we broke the reception record on tight end week last year?
Oh, yeah.
There's a chance we could break it tonight, even with 4 teams on a bye. That was in a week 1 game, and now we have 4 teams on a bye tonight. And we
4 teams on a bye and no Brock Bowers. So it's not like you're getting one of those quote-unquote premium talent guys. That's really interesting, actually. So, so just to be clear, so Johnson over Taylor if the Slayton news is more of an extended absence.
At least 2 weeks, or if not more.
Okay. All right. So really interesting stuff there. Look, that Jet game was weird too, because it was almost 10-3 at the half before the fumble. And then, you were right there, and then they go up 17-3, and then they just open up in the third quarter and then just kind of sit back.
It's always week 5, man. I'm telling you. 50%.
Hey man, I won money on Carolina yesterday. I won money on a lot of stuff. I'm very happy boy. So
50% of my Giant Survivor, the big one, 50% were out with the Rams and the Cardinals. And it's always week 5. I actually did a one where you get 2 knockouts, and I took the Titans in one. So because you get the double knockout. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it.
Well, it's Survivor pools are getting trickier and trickier. There's a lot of parity in the league. We have no undefeated teams too as we roll into week 6 already. So that doesn't always happen.
Do we have winless teams? Or is everybody
the Jets.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Jets fans.
Sorry, Jet fans. Sorry to pile on a Monday morning. I know it's rough enough for you. All right, let's get to one more guy, and then we're going to talk about a few other players too, whether or not we're chasing them. Let's talk about Torrey Horton. He only has 9 catches on the year, but a third of them are for touchdowns. I know we can't chase touchdowns, but man, Torrey Horton does show up with those 6s and on those standard leagues, and that really makes a difference. He's a player that I like going into the process of NFL draft. I was a big fan of him. I've got him on dynasty rosters. And I've got him in every deeper league going into the year because I just thought over time he would emerge. And I think Sam Darnold, like that was a great game yesterday. In a lot of ways, that was probably the best football game, right? Tampa, Seattle, those two quarterbacks going back and forth. Two guys, in the same draft who had high expectations, fell short, and now kind of have rejuvenated their careers. It was really fun. But Torrey Horton seems to be the guy in these tight spots, and he should have another, honestly, last week he should have another touchdown too. Yeah. So he has been the guy in the red zone, and I think that should count for something, especially as we are now in bye week season for fantasy football.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So I was pulling that up as well. It was Jackson Smith and Jigba, AJ Barner with 3, and then Torrey Horton was the only other one with 1. It was no Cooper Kupp. And now Cooper Kupp's still running in front of him. But as we've seen Cooper Kupp do this throughout the season, and I don't think he's going to get completely cast aside as long as he still has a game every 3 weeks, which is kind of what his pace has been, maybe every other week. But at some point, there might just be the fall off. And that's what we're playing Torrey Horton for. As you mentioned, on top of it, we're going to get bye weeks where we only have 2 this upcoming week, but then we're going to hit the 4, and the 6 is coming for that bye-mageddon, which is always wonderful why the NFL has to do that. But you're going to give me an opportunity where you can look at some matchups and say, you know what? Yeah, that's a desperation play that I could look at. And he's more appealing than chasing Dante Thornton, who got benched essentially for Jack Besh yesterday, or trying to chase Jalen Tolbert or those guys. Like, we know Torrey Horton's going to be involved because of 3 wide, because of how much they like to use him, as you mentioned, in the red zone. So there's also the upside, similar to Isaac Teslaw, that if anything happened to the top 2, and this would be a Cooper Kupp situation, where also could just be a benching, loses his role and gets put into the slot, that Torrey Horton sees upside even without an injury. And I think that's the interesting thing people need to remember, is that Cooper Kupp could get thrown into the slot when they go 3 wide, and then Horton's all of a sudden starting outside more consistently.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that very much so as the season goes on. I just, if Cooper Kupp, again, I think we keep saying this, right? If Cooper Kupp is the thing standing in the way of Torrey Horton, let's not let that stand in the way. Let's just not do it.
Still is, though.
I know, but it's October. It's still October now. So by the time it's November, if he's still standing in the way, I'm going to be irritated, but we'll see how it goes. All right. There's a couple other guys I want to ask Jacob about as we go on here on the show. But before we do, just a quick reminder as well to use the tools here at Fantasy Pros to help you get all the right waiver claims. And Waiver Central is that tool. So don't miss out on snagging potential difference makers like guys like Michael Carter, like Torrey Horton, like some of the tight ends we're talking about here today. Waiver Central is available at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Just download the Fantasy Pros app and just sync your leagues for free. And you're going to instantly see suggestions on which players you should add and which ones you should drop. So don't forget to use Waiver Central and use the waiver planner too to get a complete customized waiver plan for your league, including fab bid suggestions, pickup bids, and one-click submissions for the top fantasy football league site. So again, all this is available at myplaybook on fantasypros.com. Okay, a couple other guys to talk about here. I want to talk about Xavier Hutchinson, who had a couple touchdowns. Is that something you want to chase in week 6, Jake?
I will chase in the fact that if I just have a spot and I might need a wide receiver in a deeper league because they're on a bye, so he's going to get overlooked. And you know how a lot of people will go to sleeper and places like that, and they'll look at projected week 6, and then he won't show up because he's not going to be playing. The Xavier Hutchinson is frustrating, and yeah, I'm going to stash him in deep leagues. I mean, we're talking 12, 14 deeper benches, but he's running as the 2. They won't stop running him as the 2. This team drafts a second-round wide receiver, and Jaden Higgins guarantees his full damn contract. And I was like, you know what? You're 4th. We don't even care. Christian Kirk,
I don't understand
back from injury. I know. And so I bring up Christian Kirk to say this is like, this is what's most concerning about it is Christian Kirk getting hurt or Christian Kirk only being out there 50% of the time. You know, who's running the slot when Kirk's not on the field is Jalen Noel, which makes sense because that's who Noel is supposed to replace is Kirk. The fact with Higgins is he was supposed to replace Tank Dell as the number 2 outside. It's not. It's Xavier Hutchinson. And what is it, his 3rd year? And we saw the pre-camp news or training camp preseason news as I made that one word. I'm going to start using that, pre-camp. Pre-camp news. You like it? He saw like Hutchinson's having a great pre-camp. And then we're like, yeah, but it's his 3rd year. We know who Jaden Higgins is. Well, currently the Texans know that Xavier Hutchinson is their number 2. So again, deep leagues, I'm not super excited, but if you need a wide receiver in a deep one and he's going to get overlooked because they're on a bye, that's why.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the Chargers running back situation. Again, some of these running back rooms are just getting really thin. So now we have Amari Hampton, who's going to miss some time with an injury, which means you're going to have Hassan Haskins. You're going to have Kimani Vidal. Do you have any interest in either of those? How do you provide for them? How do you rank them if we're going into week 6 here trying to look for some help from the Chargers?
There you go. You know me. You hate when I do this.
Ah, there you go. It's the poop emoji for those of you listening. There you go. The poop emoji made an appearance on the YouTube show, everybody.
So the only reason, if it wasn't like, if it happened next week and their next two games were the Colts and the Vikings, be like, who the hell cares? Like, even if, and it sounds like the walking boots precautionary, but like, let's just like play the world where Hampton's missing 2 games. They get Miami this week, and that's the only reason anybody cares. But the problem is, it's Haskins and Vidal. Like, I'm not that interested, just because it's going to be a mess of a backfield. This is something that Roman wants to go to anyway, is using 2 running backs. Hampton forced the hand with the loss of Najee Harris, of course, and Hampton being so good. That's why I say forced his hand. So if Hampton's out against Miami, fine, you can desperation start Haskins and Vidal. I would start both of them over chasing DeMercado, but that's kind of the world we're in. It's like that. So like right now it would be Michael Carter and then these 2 and then DeMercado, but these 2 in a bucket of like, okay, you're going to hope one of them can show off and have a good day. But the split, like, it's okay, Joe, for us to say this. We don't know Harbaugh's mind. We don't know Roman's mind. We don't know what they're truly planning this week. We all speculated what the Cardinals were going to do. And we read the tea leaves and said, like, Cardinals should be the lead. And I don't think anybody was expecting it to be a 90-10 split. Obviously, Knight included. But the point being of how far aside DeMercado was, it's okay for us to say, you know what? We don't know if it's going to be Haskins 70% and Vidal 30 or vice versa, or just a full 50-50. And in that case, the answer is, if you're desperate at running back, you can start either one of them, only because it's the Dolphins.
I would lean Haskins of the 2 of them personally, just because of the history that he has with Harbaugh at Michigan. Yeah. They had a lot of success together. And I think sometimes just the comfortability, you know, when you're talking about
familiarity. Yeah, absolutely.
Familiarity, it matters. You know, coaches like to favor the guys that they trust. And, you know, when you're winning national championships and getting the big games in Michigan, you trust those certain guys. So to me, I think Haskins might be.
And hopefully he would be the answer at the goal line. That would be
right.
The big part.
You would hope. But again, don't worry, everybody. I'm sure more running backs will get hurt, and I'm sure we'll have to look for more guys. So
can we go back 2 weeks ago? We were talking about how healthy running backs were.
Yeah, right. Running backs are really holding it down this year. No, not so much. Everybody had Kyle Monangai too coming out of the bye just in case, because they might be changing a little bit of that shift there in the Chicago backfield.
That's a good one to throw out too. Yeah,
I want to throw that out there for everybody.
I feel like we've talked about him a few times. So for everybody,
but I want to mention again, because as you said, he's not going to have stats to sort from last week because he didn't play because he was on a bye, and coming out of a bye. DeAndre Swift had that touchdown 2 weeks ago. You know, he didn't play very well. The touchdown kind of masked. It was kind of like the perfume scent over a really stinky performance. So don't let that fool you necessarily.
Can I say something, Joe? How about the fact, like, everybody out there as we finish the show, love something as much as the Patriots love Stevenson and the Bears love DeAndre Swift.
I swear to God, if Ramondre Stevenson, if you fumble like, I don't know, 9 or 10 more times, we might take you off.
Your job might be on the line.
9 or 10 more times, and then that's it, buddy. Stop. All right. We got to get out of here because the short form is becoming a long form video. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you sync your leagues. Use the Fantasy Pros app. And, of course, shout out to Jake Ciely and all the great work he does at The Athletic. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Jake Ciely, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.